So the plant engineer, right? This is literally where the rubber meets the road, right? The plant engineer is continually focusing on plant production, efficiencies, safety, of course, quality of the output. Um, I've already talked a little bit about safety and security, so I'm not going to go down that road again. But this is an example of someone that is historically, you know, they're proud of their baby, I guess is the way to put it, right? They have everything running exactly the way that it should be running. They tweak it a little bit here, a little bit there to get the formula just right, but everything is running and humming along beautifully. And they're really not thinking about what if somebody breaches, what if ransomware gets in, things along those lines. So that's a concern.
Absolutely. And I think the two things I always take away from the engineers is, one is they love static. If it's not broke, don't change it. They love that. They love that mindset. If it's, give me normal, because normal means everything's working as expected.
Exactly.
And the second thing that they also, the challenge I think they also see is the aging of their systems. And I think this is a lot of times people don't realize that they have a 20 to 25 year technology lifespan on the average plant floor. So when you look at that, you're supporting that breadth of generational technologies. You kind of have to be a little bit of everything, right? You got to be a little bit of a serial guy. You got to be a little bit of a network guy. You've got to be a little bit of a controls engineer. You got so many different hats that you've got to wear because of that breadth of technology, that a lot of times they struggle with the communications from the traditional enterprise, who comes in and thinks that the life cycle is 3 to 5 years, right? Well, we replace everything every 3 years, no big deal. Whereas I could have a PLC controller that's 20, 25 years old right next to something I bought last week. And they're always considering out, how do I maintain that uptime, that maintenance window, right? That's their main focus, right? Is anything that's unplanned downtime is a bad thing for them. And so I always look at it, their biggest focus from a security perspective, as an extension of their safety and maintenance programs.
Yeah.
That's really what they focus on, right? Is cyber is just an extension of, how do I keep the lines going, and how do I focus on that? They don't care about a lot of the more traditional threat vectors. They don't care about a lot of that's not really their focus. They're focused on what's going to take my line down, and can I prevent it? Can I put controls in place to get ahead of potential impactful events?
Couldn't have said it any better. Absolutely right. I mean, I completely agree. It's, the 2025 life, window that they operate under is the antithesis of an enterprise IT cybersecurity person who's continually doing, well, we'll talk about IT operations a little bit later, but they're always patching, they're always mitigating vulnerabilities via enhancements or software upgrades, or this constant churn of change, and all of that constant churn of change to better improve the security of the IT side, of course, is not the best, well laid out, planned way of securing the OT environment. These are just two fundamentally different environments.
And security professionals out there, the first thing, if your recommendation is, I'll just go patch it, you're immediately going to disconnect from the plant engineer.
You're immediately going to be walked off the site.
Exactly right. Yeah. Why don't you just patch it, right? Well, that's the fact that their systems are so intertwined, and because of the age and breadth of their systems, a simple patch could break multiple things. You get this cascading risk just deploying a patch, that there's a validation method. It's much more riskier for them to patch, and to them, if they're down because they applied a patch that broke some customizable configuration, or they're down from a cyber event, it's the same problem. So they don't see that as a benefit to just, let me just go patch things.
Just getting a list of patches appropriate for your endpoints is not enough. Are those patches approved by the OEM vendor, right?
Absolutely.
There's a whole series. It's just a different process altogether.
Yeah, and a comment from the chat is exactly right. The time it takes to actually deploy, validate, get a patch, it is an extensive effort. So when you say just go patch it, you're basically saying ignore all the rest of the 5-6 hats you wear and focus on this one thing, despite the fact that your real job is to keep the line going, right? To keep production moving, keep all those things, focus on all those things. And that's absolutely right.
A patching program is just fundamentally different in OT from IT, and not in a mature enterprise IT side. There are it's an extensive project even on the enterprise side, but move
Absolutely.
that to a static OT environment and everything's different.
And here's a great question. Can we use data to manage risk faster? Stop relying on just on patching. That's an absolute great question. So the answer is yes. There's a lot of things we can use from data, and I'll give you a perfect example of where automation and data can really help out. Is almost every one of these plan engineers has an Excel sheet. On this Excel sheet, it's all my IP addresses, my MAC addresses, my device types, the manufacturer, all those basic asset inventory information. And every honest plan engineer will tell you that is out of date and never kept up, because it's the first thing that falls by the wayside. When you look at any kind of security problem, the first program you build out is identify, right? Knowing all your assets, knowing what they are. So the first thing the plan engineer tells you is, I try to keep it up to date, never do. The security guy says, hey, this is the best way to start a program. So finding a way to automate that process is immediately going to free up a bunch of time. It's also going to let me to identify where I can apply environmental changes, because I know where I'm impacted by risk. And I think that's the key component to a plan engineer. If I can say, and I'll just pick on Log4j just because it's a nice, easy one and everyone's fairly familiar with it over the last few months. When I get a release from my vendor that says Log4j impacted these 3 types of devices, I can go to my Excel sheet that's out of date and kind of guess where those devices might live. Or I go to an automated solution that says, this is exactly where you're impacted. And then I can engage what my protection program needs to look like. So using that data to quickly just diagnose where I'm impacted is absolutely to the plan engineer's favor.
Yeah, I mean, of all the cybersecurity programs that can be put in place, start with the basics, the blocking and tackling. What do I have? How are they configured? What's on those systems today? And maintain that over time. Because even though change doesn't occur nearly as quickly in the OT space as it does in the IT space, it does happen. And visibility into that environment and visibility into what's going on from a configuration standpoint is key. So you want to make sure that the data is accurate. You want to make sure it's up to date.
And I think there's an inherent value to that static nature though too. I can create what is normal in my environment and alert me to abnormal. That alone, there's a value I can do in that. The simplest one I can think of is, I shouldn't have IPs just show up randomly on my network. I don't have DHCP. I don't have a lot of those dynamic natures in my OT network. So if a new IP shows up, I need to know immediately. That change to static nature, I can take advantage of that from a security perspective as an OT engineer, because I don't want change. So if change occurs, I need to make sure that this is change that's beneficial to the environment, not malicious.
Right. It's either way, it's all about visibility, right? If you don't know, then it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Well, it does matter, but you have to first gain that eyes on task, eyes on what's actually happening. And then the human brain kicks in. Now you can figure out, is this good? Is it bad? Is it something I need to remediate? How would I remediate it? Do I mitigate it, etc.? Do I just document the problem? What happened?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then new question, how do we differentiate white noise from actionable data? That's everybody's favorite question. And I'll take my first whack at it, and then I want Greg to kind of sanity check me and correct me, because I'm almost positive we're going to have a slightly differing of view on this. But to me, the white noise, when you start with any system you deploy, you're going from seeing almost nothing that's happened on your network to every action on your network. So when you see that white noise, the reason is that volume of behavior that you've never seen before, you get overwhelmed, right? So I think the first process in my mind is establish a baseline of what normality is, and then start creating the alerts and the system of record for what are the abnormal behaviors I need to know. So do I necessarily want to know every time someone changes a value within a tag in an HMI? Probably don't. But do I want to see it when it exceeds a certain threshold? I probably do. So start establishing those, and that allows you to take the 100% of white noise down to 10% of valuable data, right? So you start refining that process, and it's truly a tuning exercise. When you start deploying visibility tools, the deployments, I hate to say this because it's probably going to get burnt, is the easy part. It's the tuning that's the challenge, right?
And the tuning is where you have to have a human brain involved.
Exactly.
Right? Every site's going to be unique and different in its own way and fashion. You need to have somebody with the experience of that particular site looking at the data. There's going to be a lot of data at first, but basically normalizing
Mhm.
what is normal within that environment allows you to build that baseline that Scott was just talking about. Once you have that baseline of normalcy, it's much easier to get that out of band or out of norm. I'm saying
Yeah,
normal 10 times, but
abnormal.
yeah, thanks. Abnormal activity, and that's what you're really after. So, right, do the time investment up front, get the tuning exactly the way that you want to, and different tools have different ways and techniques to do the tuning. That's
Mhm.
but it's critical. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of white noise, and then it's going to all turn into white noise in your mind, and you're not going to be able to recognize bad unusual activity from good unusual activity, and it's just nobody benefits from that.
Exactly.